expected, Harry's surprising revelation to the media last week about being unable to sit with Queen Camilla at a meeting with King Charles confirmed something many had suspected about the rebellious couple. It seemed the sole purpose of their rushed return to the UK was to seek bitter revenge against Meghan Markle's perceived adversaries. The Sussexes' dramatic exit from royal life was covered extensively on the King YouTube channel, highlighting the painful conclusion to their royal journey. According to a royal expert, tensions escalated last week between Prince Harry and Queen Camilla. The Duke of Sussex allegedly directed unwarranted criticism towards the 75-year-old Queen consort. Harry insisted on minimal attendees at the meeting, particularly excluding those with influence over Charles. His aim seemed to be to limit access to information and pressure for financial support, as it would be more difficult with fewer witnesses present to corroborate his claims. It appears that Charles had several people protecting him during the meeting, which thankfully kept the encounter brief. Now it's clear why the visit lasted only 15 minutes. It seems Harry lost his composure and behaved poorly. It's possible he was asked to leave as a consequence of his disrespectful behavior towards Camilla, which could also explain why he wasn't offered a room to stay overnight. During the meeting, Charles had Camilla present, and when Harry requested to speak with his father alone, it's likely he felt embarrassed to plead his case in front of Camilla. However, both Charles and Camilla stood firm, telling him that if he couldn't express himself in front of her, then he couldn't do so in front of Charles either. Harry probably tried to express some concerns, but it likely came across as mumbling and nonsensical. I hope you feel better soon, and yes, I'll be happy to take your call again. It's likely that Harry would have thrown one of his usual temper tantrums until he got his way, but Camilla wasn't going to tolerate that behavior. So he had no choice but to speak in front of her and behave himself. I imagine this incident will only deepen his resentment towards her, adding another woman to the list who isn't willing to give him what he wants. As for Harry's motives in London, it's suspected that he was seeking money and possibly taking on debts. However, aside from garnering publicity, it seems he didn't achieve much. Reconciliation typically implies the mutual restoration of friendly relations, but for Harry, it may have been more about financial matters. From an accounting perspective, reconciliation involves ensuring financial accounts are consistent. And for car parks, it likely refers to reconciling parking revenue. As for Harry, there's no evidence that he's done anything particularly noteworthy beyond being manipulated by a narcissistic spouse. It's worth noting that even before meeting Meghan Markle, Harry had fantasies about shooting a missile into his father's car. It must be frustrating for Meghan that the king isn't willing to engage with her directly. She seems to be pulling out all the stops, wanting to speak to Charles alone. This desire for a private audience with the sovereign can be seen as a display of power on her part. It's a way for her to assert her importance once again, rather than being viewed solely as a victim. Meghan's being ignored likely feels like the ultimate insult to her narcissistic tendencies. She may have hoped to leverage her position for financial gain or to further her agenda, but being sidelined in this manner undermines those efforts. While there may be entities willing to pay big bucks for any secrets she holds, it's likely to be a one-time deal and could ultimately tarnish her reputation. Meghan's decision to publicly play the racism card, even if it helps secure her marriage to Harry, may not have been wise in the long run. It's possible that she was focused on short-term gains without considering the potential consequences. The royal family has been notably restrained in using any leverage they may have against Meghan Markle. While there are no recollections of phone conversations being leaked to the media, Queen Elizabeth's refusal to grant Meghan a Zoom connection for the Sandringham Summit in January 2020 stands out. Meghan's subsequent claims of phone and Zoom calls with Queen Elizabeth may not hold weight. As there's no evidence to support them, there's been no mention of text or email communications either, possibly because such evidence could have been forwarded to media outlets. Interestingly, following the Oprah interview, there was a belief within the royal family that Harry and Meghan had evidence to back their claims, including phone conversations. However, no content from these alleged calls has ever been disclosed. Recently, Meghan mentioned to a journalist that she and King Charles had exchanged letters immediately after the Oprah interview. Yet again, no details from these exchanges have been made public. If Meghan had indeed written the letter to King Charles, kept a copy, and sent it by registered mail, she would have had proof of communication, making any non-response from the king seem evasive. Unfortunately, Meghan's behavior is not entirely unfounded. There is a history of individuals, both men and women, who have found themselves ensnared by her influence. Some have managed to break free from her grasp, while others remained entangled until she abruptly cut ties. Individuals who have experienced this firsthand often describe initial interactions with Meghan as charming and delightful, but struggle to articulate why they were susceptible to her influence. Turning to recent developments, it's unlikely that the king would undermine the importance of his wife and queen by meeting with Harry without her presence. Royal protocol dictates that such meetings would involve both the king and queen, and there's little chance of it being broken for Harry's sake. I firmly stand by the viewpoint that it's entirely plausible that the king didn't meet with Harry face to face at all. Why would he risk upsetting his wife, the queen, as well as the Prince and Princess of Wales, by allowing Harry the privilege of further insulting behavior against the entire royal family in front of the tabloid press? The likelihood of Harry speaking with the king and keeping quiet about it seems reasonable. It's also worth noting that Harry and Meghan tend to avoid being in the same room as those who have reason to be upset with them. It's not surprising that Harry requested to speak with his father alone. He likely knew that his father would forgive him anything. Moreover, issuing a statement via the press about seeking even just 30 minutes of his brother's time seemed like a calculated move. However, Harry was likely aware that William would completely ignore it. Even before the controversial Netflix series and memoir were made public, shared friends of Harry and William had indicated William's anger about the Oprah interview and the possibility that he might never speak to Harry again. Harry likely knew he wouldn't have to face his brother's fury by requesting to speak with his father alone. None of his actions seemed to stem from genuine contrition or a desire to make amends for betraying those he once loved. Healing such rifts requires significant contrition and effort, and even then, the mistrust may linger indefinitely. It's evident that Harry isn't actively trying to end the perceived feud. In reality, it's not so much a feud as it is a profound loss of trust among family members who may never fully trust Harry, let alone Meghan, again. Harry's goal seems to be maintaining the appearance of still being part of the family, even though he's not and likely never will be again. It's clear that Charles hasn't forgiven him. While Charles may have had a chat with Harry, it's unlikely that Harry received what he wanted from the conversation. If he had, William would have likely been present at the meeting. As long as William refuses to see Harry, Charles is unlikely to take any steps toward reconciliation. Camilla's allegiance lies not only with Harry's victims, but also with Kate, as we've witnessed. Therefore, it's unlikely that Charles will forgive Harry, especially if Harry believes he can manipulate the situation. Harry may not fully grasp the seriousness of his actions, particularly considering the added pain of his father's battle with cancer and his contentment with Camilla. As a grown man, Harry should appreciate that his father is living a joyful life with the woman he loves, rather than being depressed and mourning in widow's attire. It's worth noting that Harry didn't even receive the news of Prince Philip's passing directly from his father, as he had changed his contact information without informing him. Charles isn't publicly mourning like Queen Victoria, but if he were, Harry would likely criticize it as performative grief. Harry's continual whining and further demands are tiresome. Invading his father's household without invitation is incredibly rude. It's King Charles II, who deserves the majority of consideration, along with the company of his queen, not the son who has flown over uninvited and is causing trouble in a spectacular manner as usual. Harry and his wife don't seem genuinely interested in reconciliation. Rather, they appear to want to continue bullying. It's utterly contemptible that Harry won't even pretend to get along with Camilla in order to improve his chances of financial gain or relevance. It's clear he lacks intelligence in this regard. Despite his wife being constantly by his side, he still wants his father's wife to stay away from them. Camilla's PR team is doing a great job of giving it back to Harry. If he continues like this, he'll tarnish Diana's reputation. On the contrary, Camilla is the antithesis of Diana and the complete opposite of Harry and Meghan. She married Charles despite not wanting to become queen, that she's excelling in her role. She never overshadows Charles because she likely doesn't want to. She's dignified and truly modest. In contrast, Harry lacks courage. He can't face Camilla after the things he said about her. It's easy for him to make those comments from a safe distance, but he lacks the bravery to confront her face to face because they both know the lies he told. This situation is indeed confusing. Sacrificing someone on their PR altar implies using negative information about them to improve one's own image. However, leaking negative details about her stepson, Harry, wouldn't necessarily improve Camilla's image. It might make her appear less like a devoted stepmother, which could have negative repercussions for her public image. It's interesting to see snippets of information making their way into the public sphere. It's possible that more will surface in response to Harry's use of King Charles' diagnosis as a PR stunt. This could serve as a warning that future stunts will be met with truth, as hatred often stems from envy. Harry's envy of his father's happy marriage to Camilla and perhaps her supportive nature could be driving his actions. It seems like Harry has a problem with other people's happiness and has spent the past year trying to make his closest relatives miserable. Harry seems to harbor suspicion towards anyone who seems to enjoy life more than him. If Camilla had been miserable in her marriage, he would likely rush to embrace her and publicly declare his friendship. However, Harry is too focused on nursing his hurt feelings and searching for new grievances to be a productive member of society. He's not interested in being of use to anyone else. He's too preoccupied with seeking atonement from others and unwilling to entertain the possibility that others may be innocent people living their lives. It's unfortunate that Harry, who wasn't raised this way, seems to have been influenced by Meghan Markle's ideas. It's easier for him to convince himself that he's been greatly mistreated than to acknowledge that he's been fortunate and may have harmed others. This refusal to face reality is concerning. Well done, Meghan. Harry's actions reveal his narcissistic tendencies. His visit wasn't about reconciliation or checking on his father. It was about his own grievances. If he truly cared about his father, he would recognize Camilla's importance to him. Harry's twisted jealousy towards a woman who has supported his father speaks volumes. While it's understandable that Harry may harbor resentment towards Camilla for her role in his parents' past, his ongoing petulance is concerning. He's been allowed to behave this way for so long that he's likely surprised by the lack of tolerance for his behavior. It must be exhausting for adults to deal with a nearly 40-year-old man who acts like someone much younger. It's evident that there's a deep love and friendship between Charles and Camilla, and they communicate with ease. While Harry doesn't have to like Camilla, he should respect their relationship. Camilla is Charles's chosen partner, and it's worth noting that she didn't seek this life or the throne. She was in love with her first husband, much like Charles was with Diana. Camilla's first marriage was complicated by her emotionally immature partner, who engaged in extramarital affairs. Diana and Andrew Parker Bowles both had extramarital relationships, which left their spouses open to rekindling their connection. Camilla continued to spend time in her old house, which she loved even after marrying Charles. If Diana hadn't exposed Charles and Camilla's relationship, they might not have ended up together. Diana's 3 in the marriage comment essentially sealed the fate of her marriage to Charles. If Harry seeks someone to blame for his parents' marital breakdown, he need look no further than his late mother. Despite her beauty and compassion, Diana was far from a saint. While the extramarital affairs were undeniably wrong, Diana had her own flaws, much like her second-born son. Diana had a tendency to push people to their emotional limits, leading her friends and family to distance themselves as she pursued wealthier suitors. Similarly, Harry sought out a wealthy partner who he believed could fulfill his desires and rival his father and brother. It's telling of Harry's sense of entitlement that he demands apologies for perceived slights against himself and his wife, despite their own questionable actions. He fails to extend the same respect to Camilla, whom his father obviously loves deeply and who is the queen. Interestingly, I recently read something that suggested Camilla has always been perceived as lazy. However, considering the expectations placed on women of her generation in the aristocratic country set, not much was expected in terms of formal education. They were typically better trained in conversation and hosting skills. However, it would be unjust to label Camilla as such, especially given the work she has undertaken since marrying Charles and particularly since becoming queen. Camilla has been diligent in carrying out her charitable endeavors, especially recently when both the king and Catherine were unavailable. She has truly stepped up her efforts. For instance, she traveled a total of 12 hours by car to attend an event at Salisbury Cathedral, as bad weather prevented flying. Despite the challenges, she didn't want to disappoint anyone, so she made the journey. That's a pretty demanding day for anyone, especially someone in her late 70s. I think many of us underestimated her. It was Charles who was forced into marriage, not Diana. Diana was eager to get married even when advised against it. And Charles tried to be a good husband during the honeymoon, showing Diana who he was, what he liked, and what he thought. He wanted to know Diana's preferences and desires. What did Diana say? She found it boring. Then she used the excuse of Charles having twins with Camilla because Diana's problem was that she needed to portray herself as being in love with Charles, when in reality she wasn't. She was simply excited about marrying a prince. Diana was not used or mistreated by Charles. She married the Prince of Wales, and when she realized that Charles didn't conform to her expectations, she threw tantrums. Diana forced Charles to abandon one of his dogs because she didn't like him, and she blocked Charles's friends quite a bit. She even distanced Charles from Anne. Diana was rude to Anne. Charles did not stop Diana. He did not confront her, and that was his mistake. But Diana did many very ugly things so that Charles ended up getting bored without Camilla or with Camilla. That relationship failed because Charles did not know how to react to Diana, who demanded that he be absolutely devoted to her and only her. Deep down, Diana punished Charles for the mistakes Charles made and for destroying her childhood illusions. Charles' mistake was not having confronted Diana and simply waiting for things to magically improve. Charles didn't even react when he found out that Diana had her bodyguard Mankey as a lover, but Diana blamed him for not being the husband she wanted him to be and the prince she wanted him to be, and that was unfair. William therefore took great care to ensure that Kate was very clear about what she was going to assume if she married him. Diana simply refused to listen, and when reality hit her, she couldn't stand it and blamed Charles for that. And you, what do you think about the information I gave? Let me know your opinion in the comments. Don't hesitate to share my videos with everyone and press the subscribe button so you don't miss the latest videos from the King YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and see you tomorrow.